Welcome to another edition of the MMA Lockcast live, I should say. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. And this week we're going over UFC Vegas 33, headlined by Strickland and Uriah Hall. Very much looking forward to this fight, and I can't wait to break it down for you guys. A little bit delayed in terms of the dropping of the podcast and being a little bit further along in the fight week. So been an interesting week, let's just put it that way. But luckily, I've been able to get through all my studying, and I am ready to drop my picks for you guys and my predictions for the entire card. Now, first and foremost, shout out to everybody that's up with me on at 1 a.m. on a Friday morning, if that's what you guys want to call it now. So shout out to you guys. Hit that like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. I am going to be dropping this as well on my on my audio platforms as well, since I won't be doing a pre-recorded version of it either. So shout out to everybody that's going to be watching, listening, and all that type of stuff. And I wore my lucky champions Raptors hat because today was the NBA draft, or I should say yesterday was the NBA draft, and I'm hoping that our guy Scotty Barnes actually pans out to be a solid character for us, or a solid player that could potentially take us to another title. But again, it's just a one guy, not getting my hopes up too high for this. And again, I don't follow college basketball that closely, so I don't really know who the best guys are out there, but I'm hoping that they made the right decision this time around and pick somebody for us that will translate into a solid, even if they get a very solid role player, I'll be happy with that. So yeah, that's why I'm rocking the Raptors hat today for you guys. But yeah, we are here to discuss UFC Vegas 33. Quick shout outs right off the bat to the Patreon members. Shout out to you guys. We're up to about 425 Patreon members. The number continues to grow. It does take a dip at times, obviously, when I end up having a losing event. But the core group of guys, I'd say there's roughly about 300 to 350 people that just stick around no matter what, due to their appreciation for your boy and, putting in the work that I put in. So shout out to you guys first and foremost. Link is in the description below if you guys want to hop on there. And shout out to the Discord family over there as too, man. You guys are just absolutely killing it, just staying consistent and staying active in the Discord. It's always great to just wake up at random times of the night or just any time of the day and look over and see like fucking 40 to 50 new messages because you guys just stay active in there. So shout out to you guys for that. And then secondly, Coolbet. So obviously I got to shout out to Coolbet for supporting your boy on every episode. Coolbet.com. Use promo code MMALOTN2. That's the number 2, and they'll match your initial deposit up to $200. Great website, great odds. Make some of my bets on there. They also allow you to parlay props, which is something that not a lot of bookies allow you to do. So that's if that's something that's up your alley, Coolbet will definitely allow you to take advantage of that. So definitely go check out Coolbet. Once again, Coolbet.com, promo code MMALOTN2. So I'm going to try to keep the interactions on the live chat to a little bit of a minimum this time around. Again, this is going to be on the audio platform as well. I know a lot of people on the audio platform don't really like me kind of meandering through the comments section to kind of fill up time. So I don't want to spend too much time in there. I will try to look through it and see if there's anything that I need to kind of address that would be important for the matchup that I'm actually going over. Otherwise, I do just want to give you guys a quick shout out and say what's up to everybody that's already in there and keeping it lit. So I'll try to hop on over to the comment section and say what's up, but we will see what it is. My guy Z's MMA right here saying if they still named events, this one will be called Red Flag, and I like that too. I definitely do like that. Let's just quickly see any prices in the chat. Rogue Strummer in the chat. Shout out to you guys. Genie in the chat. So I will be going. I see my guy Liam's picks fights as well as my guy John Schiffman in the chat as well too. Shout out to all you guys, even AJ's MMA. It seems like everybody is fucking up at this hour, either tape studying or trying to place a bet. So shout out to you guys. Again, not the normal time for me to be hopping on the live stream, but I still do appreciate everybody doing this damn thing. All right, let's get into the podcast here. First and foremost, we usually do the betting recap. So the last event that we had was UFC Vegas 32. Lock of the night shits the bed. -4.5 units on Ian Heine. She honey-dicked me and seemingly a ton of other people, as I thought he'd be able to go out there and pretty much implement his clinch heavy and grapple heavy game against Imavov here. But Imavov did a really good job in terms of nullifying the amount of success that Heinisch was having, breaking off, and then just absolutely laying an ass whooping on him. So Heinisch definitely shit the bed there. Definitely blacklisted for me in terms of guys that, you can't really trust to go out there and have consistent performances. Having that 1-3 record that he had before the Imavov fight, over his last 4 fights, I gave the credit to the fact that he was fighting guys that were better wrestlers than him. And now Imavov showing off some great improvements in terms of being able to stay off the cage and nullifying grappling success that other fighters were having against him, and then just absolutely opening up on Heinisch. Even Heinisch's cardio kind of surprised me there too, that he dropped it the way that he did. But is what it is. We live and we learn, and we have to move on, because if we just stick back in the past, you guys won't be getting UFC Vegas 33 breakdowns or anything like that. So shitty way to lose the lock of the night bet there. But luckily, we stopped the bleeding a little bit with some sharp dog plays here. So first and foremost, Darren Elkins goes out there and gets his ass handed to for about 6 minutes. But then he does what Elkins does, and Derek Minner does what Derek Minner does, and that's gas. And luckily for Elkins, he was able to survive a lot of that submission onslaught and go out there and finish. I believe it was closer to the ending of the second round against Minner. There is going to be another spot on this card that I can't wait to talk about in terms of recency bias as to why I picked Elkins over Minner last week. And I feel like it's kind of going to be the opposite. I'm saying there's recency bias in the Darren Elkins and Derek Minner fight due to with the intention of picking the underdog with, who didn't have the recency bias on him. But there is a fight on this upcoming part of the card that I'm going to talk about later in the card, and I'll obviously mention it that I talked about it earlier, but it's, recency bias that is, in my opinion, slightly negative, but I'm still down to bet on the fighter that has that negative recency bias on it. But we'll talk about that. But yeah, shout out to Elkins going out there and doing what Elkins does. And then Paiva cashes half unit plus 220 underdog. Again, yes, that first round should have been a 10-8. That's without a doubt. But shout out to Paiva to go out there and still win the second and third rounds and then secure that victory regardless. Clear as day, Paiva was the betting side for that fight. People can say what they want about, Phillips emptied his gas tank in round 1, which is why Paiva was able to win the next 2 rounds. Sure, but Paiva survived. Paiva came through and won the next 2 rounds. Again, I forgot who, I think it was my guy Danny Legs. Shout out to Danny Legs, who tweeted something similar, like, people that were pissed off about the Phillips decision are, trying to save a losing ticket from a push ticket. And I get it. I completely understand that. But Paiva was the right side, and I'm glad that I was on that side for this fight. So, yeah, all in all, minus 2.07 units. What can I say? Ian Heinisch shit the bed, but hoping that I can turn around for this weekend. All right. Again, you guys are going to definitely be keeping it lit in the chat. Again, I don't want to spend too much time just reading to the chat, just because the audio listeners are just like, hey, keep talking, bro. Keep on with the podcast. James C, I will quickly answer this for you guys. Are going to do the main breakdown, the main Bellator. I'm going to be dropping a best bets and props article on my Patreon for the main card of Bellator. I'll be doing that tomorrow afternoon. And if I have time, I have a pretty busy schedule tomorrow. I'm doing a podcast appearance, and then obviously I'm doing 2 podcast appearances, and then obviously my own Ultimate Weigh-In show that I'm going to be doing later as well. So if I can fit, maybe an hour or so, maybe I'll do a quick live stream to go over Bellator. But yeah, I needed to focus is UFC for me this week. But again, obviously some great fights on Bellator. All right, let's move this thing along. First and foremost, we got Phil Rowe going up against Luis Cosce Orion Cosce. Let's go with Orion Cosce, minus 145, plus 125 for Fresh Prince. Obviously, you guys can recognize the name Cosce due to Luis Cosce fighting a couple months ago. It's been a while now that I'm thinking about it, but it was he went out there and absolutely shit the bed as a huge favorite against Sasha Palatnikov. That was November, UFC 255. So it's been a long time since we've seen one of the Cosce brothers in there. Orion was actually supposed to fight on that card too. I believe he suffered an injury, and then now he's back to fight Phil Rowe here. Similar fighting styles for both guys. Good, good wrestlers. They have good raw talent. They have some decent power as well. A lot of first round finishes on the records. I think Orion has a little bit more finishes that were later on. Obviously, his Contender Series fight against Matt Dixon, where he was able to get that late finish with about 20 seconds left. But his regional tape looks sketchy, not to mention his level of competition on the regional scene was super sketchy as well. It seemed like there were certain fights where he was gassing and kind of just going to his back and pulling guillotine. And luckily for him, he wasn't fighting a very skilled opponent who was able to take advantage of those situations. And I wouldn't even be surprised if there was some ridiculous backroom stuff going on as well, because it looked like these Cosce brothers were fighting for a hometown promotion that was just all over them. Even through the commentary, it was just clear as day. But I think that Cosce, I think they have solid talent. Both of them, but we'll talk specifically about Orion here. I think they have good talent, but I think that they're still raw to a certain extent. And even in my previous breakdowns that I've done of Phil Rowe, I've said that I feel like he's a little bit raw as well. But I thought we saw some decent things in this fight with Gabe Green, who's just an absolute banshee in terms of just coming forward and chucking bombs. But I think that Cosce is going to struggle a little bit here in terms of closing the distance against Rowe and probably just be eating, straights down the middle. I like the front kicks that Rowe has in terms of kind of maintaining his distance. Obviously, he's going to have a huge reach and height advantage in this fight that he should be able to utilize pretty well. The only concern, obviously, Gabe Green was able to kind of exploit it last time, was the leg kicks. It doesn't seem like Rowe does a good job in terms of checking leg kicks, specifically those calf kicks. Cosce does have a couple kicks in his arsenal, don't get me wrong, but it's not something that I truly leans on. It seems more so, likes to throw those bombs, land a couple takedowns, and go for some submissions. But I think he's going to struggle to do that here against a guy like Phil Rowe. Obviously, we've been seeing a ton of love come in for Phil Rowe as the fight week has progressed. He opened up around plus 150, got to about plus 175, and hovered there for a couple of days. And then slowly the line started to move back in favor of Phil Rowe here. And once you run the tape, you completely understand why. He does seem to have the slicker boxing here, slicker stand-up, good movement as well. And I think his jiu-jitsu is good enough to kind of keep him out of any big trouble that Cosce will try to put him in early in this fight. And then as the fight starts to wear on, I think that Rowe's distance striking is going to get the better of Cosce. I think we'll see Cosce start to slow down. And I think that he's going to succumb to some of these positions that Rowe will be able to put onto him, whether it's grappling, clinching, or even, just staying in the striking realm and just picking him apart from distance. So yeah, I do like Phil Rowe in this spot. I think he's a solid underdog, one of the definitely one of the more solid underdogs on this card. And I think he's a side here. I'm going to take him to win by decision. I wouldn't rule out a potential round 3 prop, although Cosce did get a round 3 finish in his last fight. It almost seemed like his opponent, Matt Dixon, had worse cardio than he did. So hopefully Rowe can bring a better gas tank to the table, and he could definitely work out Cosce in this fight. But I do like Rowe in this fight. I do think he is a very good underdog for this fight. All right. Again, shout out to everybody that's in the chat here. I hope there's no chaos or any bullshit that's going on in the chat, because I'm not going to be monitoring it too much unless somebody's completely spamming the shit out of it. Obviously, I'll be able to see that, but be nice in there. That's all I'm going to say. All right, let's move on to the next fight. I do have Rowe either by round 3 finish or a decision, but I do like Rowe in the spot. I do want to quickly actually look at Rowe's decision line here. Rowe to win by decision plus 360. Not too bad of a spot. Not too bad of a spot. Might have to take a little bit of a sprinkle myself. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Ronnie the Heat Lawrence going up against Trevin 5-star Jones. I believe his name is Jones. Once again, the favorite, but not as big of a favorite as he was in his first 2 UFC fights. If you guys remember, he was a huge underdog to Timur Valiev in that fight, where Valiev hurt him numerous times in that first round, almost put him out, threw everything in the kitchen sink. Yet our guy, what's his name? What's that referee's name that wants to see people die? Chris Dione is like, oh, Jones isn't dead yet. Let's keep going. And then Timur Valiev definitely learned a very valuable lesson that night, which is don't throw the kitchen sink and, try to conserve your energy a little bit more, because it seemed like he was pretty gassed come that second round. And can you blame him? He was so close to finishing Jones, but just couldn't get him out of there. So Valiev, obviously, huge drop off in his cardio and his activity in the second round, and Jones was able to capitalize and put him away there. And then in the next fight, very close first round against Mario Bautista. Bautista doing some good stuff with his footwork and his striking. And then in the second round, we see Jones catch him with a beautiful, I believe it was an uppercut, lead uppercut with his power hand, because I think he was in his opposite stance, and just absolutely levels Mario Bautista, follows up with some ground and pound and gets him out of there. I even said in the lead up to that fight, for the breakdown for that specific fight, I truly thought the only way Jones wins this fight is by a Hail Mary KO, and it worked out for him. The guy has some power. The guy has some resiliency, and that's something that we definitely have to take notice of whenever we cap his fights. Another thing that he likes to do a lot is his leg kicks. He landed, I think, 20 or 21 leg kicks in the first 5 minutes of his fight against Mario Bautista, so that's something he definitely targets on his opponents, especially to try to slow them down. Against Lawrence, I think he's going to attempt to do the same thing, especially considering how much Lawrence moves about the cage. However, I think that could potentially set up a takedown opportunity for Lawrence if he times these kicks properly and tries to parlay them into a takedown. Lawrence has everything you could like in a kid in terms of cardio and wrestling. I think those are like the two. If you have those two things as your base and your bread and butter of your game plan, I think you have a very high ceiling in terms of having success inside the UFC. Again, this is a long stretch in terms of a comparison, but the reason Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman are so successful, their cardio and the wrestling is, second to none almost. They're able to go out there, land takedowns time after time. It doesn't matter if their opponent gets back to their feet. They're able to go out and do that. But we are seeing the progress from Kamaru in terms of getting his hands better. Even with Colby, his hands are getting a little bit better, especially with the pace that he pushes. But Lawrence, starting off nice and raw here with just wrestling and cardio, I think that's enough for him to, make it to a certain point within the UFC. He's planted his feet, I believe, now over there at Sanford MMA, which is also obviously a very great training camp that you should be able to go out there and get some good bodies to work with, and obviously some good coaching to kind of steer him in the right direction. And I would really like to see his striking, kind of tighten up a little bit more. He seems a little bit wild, right? Throws a lot of spinning stuff, throws a lot of wacky, unorthodox stuff, especially from the outside, because that's how he likes to move. Stays on the outside and just waits for his opportunities to kind of close the distance and either one, come with the strike, or two, come with the takedown. And it's very difficult for opponents to kind of read what's going to be coming their way, which is why Lawrence is more often than not successful with his approach. My concern here, though, is, if Jones does clip him too, that's absolutely a possibility. But again, I do think that's that small variable that Jones, he has that knockout opportunity. That's kind of his that, in my opinion, that's his only way to win this fight. Jones has a pretty good grappling background. Don't get me wrong. I do think he can make this fight competitive if it does get taken to the ground. And I don't think that Lawrence is going to just slice through him like butter or anything like that. I do think that Lawrence will get some control time on the ground and then obviously have some decent success on the feet. But I think it's all going to come through control. Control. Stay on Jones. Don't let him breathe. Jones has this knack to allow opponents to kind of dictate the pace, and I think that's going to be trouble for him, especially for a guy like Lawrence, especially up against a guy like Lawrence, who I do think is going to be able to complete takedowns with relative ease here and just take home a decision victory. So the way that I'd be looking to attack it, Lawrence by decision. I'd be surprised if he actually finishes a guy like Trevin Jones, who's been known to be quite durable. Lawrence by decision is plus 210. I like that line. I think that's a solid spot. I think it's going to be. I remember after the Vince Cachero fights, a lot of people are like, "Oh, we're not going to get Ronnie Lawrence at a good line anymore." Here we have a good line. Now, are you willing to take the risk? I do like Lawrence here. I do think he gets it done. I do think he gets it done via decision. Again, a very bright prospect, a guy I think that has a very high ceiling. The question is, can he implement it effectively without getting clipped? That's kind of my concern in terms of playing his money line here. But that decision line is definitely the spot that I like. My guy Jimmy the Drunk here saying, Ronnie, poor man's Gillespie Lawrence, but it's working. It's definitely working. So I do like Mr. I do like Mr. Lawrence here in this spot. I will say this: I'm going to have a small little Q&A session at the end of the stream here, just to answer a couple of the questions that we got going on. But again, I'm just going to fly through some of these matchups just to respect the people that are listening to this on the audio on the back end. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got Ashley Yoder minus 150 going up against Jinyu Frey plus 130. Super close, tight fight. Super difficult to break down in terms of who's really going to have the advantage. Yoder, obviously, black belt in jiu-jitsu, working on her takedowns, working on her clinch game, even working on her striking. But the issue is that her volume seems to be lacking at certain points in fights. Frey, on the other hand, obviously had a very solid bounce back fight where she was able to pick up the win over Gloria DePaulo, I believe, who actually finds herself in, a much higher spot on the card, which is hilarious. But Frey going out there trying to put together 2 wins here in the UFC. And I think that this is a winnable fight for her against Ashley Yoder. The issue is, what kind of approach is she going to come up with? Because if she goes out there and tries to grapple fuck Yoder, I think she's going to have some solid success. Obviously, she has a lot of submissions and stuff to worry about, but I do believe that if they end up in scrambled positions, Frey might actually be the one that ends up getting ahead and getting on top and having more success in those scramble positions. On the feet, both girls leave a lot to be desired, man. It's very interesting to me in terms of Jinyu Frey's last fight against Gloria DePaula, where she just absolutely wins the first round, grapple fucking DePaula. Then she goes out there and decides to stand and strike. I'm not sure if that was more so an issue for her to, a game plan of hers to kind of get her wits back about her and get that the cardio that she needs stored enough to go out there and win the third round decisively, just as she did, pretty much controlling the back of DePaula for the majority of the third round. Luckily for her, she didn't get hit with anything too big in that second round, which is why she was able to implement that game plan in the third round the way that she did. And I don't think she has much to worry about in terms of the striking with Yoder here. My concern also lays with the fact that Frey is a 105er. She will always be a 105er. And whenever she's going up against some of these mainstays at 115 pounds, she's always going to be outsized. And that's exactly the case in this spot. What I'll say in returns to that is, though, I don't think that Yoder is that strong. I don't think that she'll have a huge strength advantage in the spot, which is why I still do lean on the Jinyu Frey side. Tough fight to call. I'd rather have the plus money side. I'd rather take the plus money even on the decision line, because I highly doubt we'll see a finish on either side. I don't think that Frey has the knockout power, nor do I think that she has the ground game to muster up a TKO on the ground, nor do I think that she'll be able to snatch up a submission on the black belt on Yoder. And just as obvious on the other side, I don't think that Yoder has the knockout capabilities. And even though Yoder is a black belt, I don't think that it's going to allow her to find that submission here on Jinyu Frey. So the spot that I'm looking at, Jinyu Frey to win by decision at plus 200. Give me some of that. But again, close fight. Close fight. You can't be mad at either outcome because you know what you're getting yourself into with this type of fight. All right. Yeah, shout out to my guy Sex God right here. This fight is 1-800 Grambler for sure. All right. Moving on to the next fight, we got Danny Chavez going up against Kamaka. Minus 105 on Chavez, minus 115 on Kamaka. Very close fight. Again, in terms of the odds, minus 115. Again, I've seen on either side, minus 110 at certain spots. It's pretty much been staying at a pick'em with a couple spots that are actually giving Danny Chavez some plus money. Now, remember when everybody was so high on Danny Chavez going into that Jared Gordon fight? That's a clear example of what recency bias could look like, especially when he's going up against a guy like TJ Brown, a common opponent of both of these guys, where he's able to go out there and just completely implement his game. We saw, in my opinion, we saw a different TJ Brown in the Chavez fight than we did in the Kamaka fight, which is why Chavez had as much success as he did. A lot of calf kicking. Obviously, he trains out of MMA Masters, a gym that's kind of known to go out there and utilize that calf kick, and he was able to implement a very a solid approach against TJ Brown in Danny Chavez's UFC debut. which is why he was able to take that win there. And then in his next fight against Jared Gordon, he's going up against a guy that's just stayed in his face and gave him no room to breathe and just did not allow him to get any of his game going. And then obviously Jared Gordon completes takedowns as well to truly put a hammer or nail in that coffin of that fight. So good one for Jared Gordon there, especially as an underdog in that fight. So I was happy to cash that bet. But Danny Chavez still has some good things that he can go out there and implement a guy against a guy like Kai Kamaka. I think Kamaka is a skilled fighter, but I do think that he does struggle when guys are able to kind of get their own game going, especially in the striking realm, and especially kind of just pushing them back. I'll say this. I had a bet on TJ Brown against Kai Kamaka, and I thought that Kai Kamaka overperformed, definitely deserved that decision, but unluckily for him, they ended up giving it to TJ Brown that night. I think Kai Kamaka is a great striker. Shows good technique, good combinations. I think he has some decent potential, but I do think he does start to slow down as well later in fights, which could potentially cause him issues, especially here against Chavez, who will, in my opinion, I think he'll stay on him for the majority of the fight. I think Kamaka, again, I think he struggles, especially when he's not able to get his game going, when guys are putting combinations on him, when guys are putting punches on him. And I think Chavez, obviously, I think he's going to be targeting that calf right off the bat. And I think that will slow down Kamaka, allowing Chavez to really get his striking going and potentially even throwing in some takedowns in there if he needs it. Kamaka, obviously, another spot where he's coming in on short notice. He's done it a couple times in the UFC now. But I think that this is one of the tougher ones for him to come in and try to find a W, as I do think that Chavez, very well skilled, very well trained, like I said, out of MMA Masters, he should be able to get the better of the striking exchanges, revolve a game plan around that calf kick, slow down Kamaka, and then start getting your hands going or start mixing in some takedowns if you like. But I do like Chavez in the spot. If you're getting even money here, I give the slight advantage to Chavez as well in terms of, him maybe deservedly being a little bit bigger of a favorite, maybe minus 125, minus 130. But I do like Chavez to win this fight. Again, not a big spot for me in terms of the confidence level, but I do think that Chavez still gets it done this week. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Chris Gruetzemacher going up against Yahya Garcia, minus 310 on Garcia, plus 255 on Gruetzemacher. Now, I completely understand why people are going out there and be like, oh, Garcia should just absolutely steamroll in this fight. But if you look a little bit deeper into this fight, you might find yourself questioning Garcia's side. Now, I do think Garcia wins. I'll tell you guys right off the bat, my prediction is going to be a Garcia first round knockout, but the issue is if Garcia doesn't get that first round knockout, he could potentially be in some trouble. Now, I know Gruetzemacher isn't the greatest fighter, but I'd like to call him the poor man's Darren Elkins, and that, probably not the best compliment you can give anybody, but he seems to have that grind and that grit that could definitely give a guy like Garcia problems, especially with, past fights where I've seen Garcia start to slow down and, the pop on his shots just doesn't seem to be there anymore. And I think that could potentially cause him some issues here with Gruetzemacher, who's going to be moving forward, who's going to be kind of pushing Garcia and kind of just, trying to break him. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, he went 3 rounds against Nasrat Haqparast on short notice, albeit great. And he ended up making it to a decision. So why should a guy like Gruetzemacher go out there and finish him if a guy like Nasrat didn't? They're completely different styles, though, right? You got Nasrat Haqparast out there doing the matador. He's sticking and moving, landing a couple big shots and getting out of the way, not really pushing the fight too much. With Gruetzemacher, you're going to get a guy that's going to take a little bit of a beating in the first round. And if he doesn't get knocked out, he's going to start to come forward and he's going to stay in your face. He's going to push you up against the cage and he's going to make it grindy. And we could potentially see that gas tank of Garcia potentially fail him. And that's what's kind of keeping me off it. Like, again, I've had so many people hit me up this week, be like, "Oh, Garcia should be the lock of the night play," but I'm a little bit skeptical about it. Again, another big shout out to my guy AJ Sholo from AJ MMA Betting and Daily Fan MMA. We put a little bit too much stock into the standing knockout. If it's a knockout that you expect that's going to happen on the ground from ground and pound, like from a legitimate and formidable wrestler, then okay, I understand it. But we sometimes put a little bit too much sauce on that a guy is just ultimately going to go out there and get starched immediately. One fight that kind of comes to my mind that somewhat works into my argument here is the Sumudarji versus Zaruk Adashev fight, right? Everybody going out there and be like, "Oh, Adashev is chinny. He's going to get knocked out within the first round. This is a quick, easy win for Sumudarji." Now, it was still kind of an easy fight. Mudarji goes out there and wins a decision, but that just goes to show, just because a guy got knocked the fuck out in his last fight, it doesn't mean it's always going to happen. Garcia does throw everything he has into all of his shots, and he could absolutely find the chin of Gruetzemacher and put him out in this spot, which is ultimately what I'm going to be predicting to happen. But if he doesn't, things get sticky. Things will get sticky. And I think that Gruetzemacher could do something to stifle those plans of Garcia. So the way that I actually approach this fight, I took the under 2.5. That's my dog of the night play. I took the under 2.5, 1 unit at plus 100. I think both guys have finishing capabilities. I think Garcia could get him out of there early, which is ultimately what my prediction is going to be. But then there's also the possibility that if Gruetzemacher does survive, he's going to go out there and do what Gruetzemacher does, and that's push dudes and try to break dudes. And he could do that here against Garcia. So, yeah, the pick is still Garcia, but again, it could get a little bit sticky if Garcia doesn't get this done quickly. I see you, Z. I see you. Don't worry. I know you're heavy on Garcia. There you go. Don't let me scare you away from the bet that you just made, but I'm just trying to be a level head with this fight. But yeah, I do like Garcia though. I still think he gets it done round 1 KO, but I'm taking the under 2.5. That's the spot that I'm going to be approaching here. Again, there are some good props for Garcia too. Don't get me wrong. Garcia KO, obviously, plus 425, which I think is a little bit crazy. Garcia round 1, plus 300, not too bad either. Marker round 3, plus 2325. I might have to stick my hand in the cookie jar there and see what happens. But yeah, I do think that Garcia gets it done round 1. KO. All right, let's move on to the next fight. I believe we got a 13 fight card here. Next up, we got Colin Anglin going up against Meltsik Baghdasaryan, minus 140 for Baghdasaryan, and plus 120 for Anglin. Fun fight. This could potentially be fight of the night. Now, Baghdasaryan, I believe his 4 fights before coming to the Contender Series, he went out there and just absolutely starched dudes within like seconds. I'm talking about like 7 seconds, 11 seconds, 13 seconds. Like he's just going out there and just absolutely stifling dudes real quick. And once you see him fight, you completely understand why. The guy, took one MMA fight in 2014 and he lost. Then he switched on over to kickboxing and boxing, and it was just having a lot of success there. And then came back over to the MMA world and just kept starching dudes up until the point that he made it to the Contender Series. And he goes out there and has a solid showing against a guy that just wasn't going away. And Dennis Bazukia, I believe the guy's name was. Solid showing for him in there, right? Like he went out there and he did the Baghdasaryan thing, which is try to get his opponent out of there in the first round. And Bazukia was still sticking around. He was rolling with some of the shots, but he was still eating a good brunt of those shots. But in the second and third rounds, we still saw Baghdasaryan kind of moving forward, really not pushing the pace, I should say, kind of just pushing the fight to Bazukia, just staying in his face. All of his shots, he's throwing heavy strikes, his leg kicks, his body kicks, his fucking punches down the middle. He'd clinch up at certain points to kind of just catch his breath, and then whenever you would catch his breath, he would just break off and start throwing bombs again. So it was, even though it looked like he was gassing, it was still impressive in the fact that he was still throwing heavy enough shots to kind of keep his opponent off of him and just pretty much intimidate his opponent the entire way. So it's hilarious seeing guys that look like they're close to death, but they're still going out there and throwing good shots and throwing good combinations and throwing solid power. So that kind of impressed me about Baghdasaryan. And obviously he's going up against in my opinion, a slightly better opponent here in Colin Anglin, who, had success on the regional scene, finishing skeptical competition. Then he goes out there and puts a little bit of a whooping on Naimov, I believe the guy's name was. for the Contender Series, and then eventually gets the his contract after that. So you could break this down as simple as, Baghdasaryan early or Anglin late, but I think even if this fight does reach the second round, Baghdasaryan could absolutely put a whooping on Anglin. Anglin, hittable for sure. I think he has a little bit more of a, I don't want to say wild, a little bit a solid technical striking game, but I do think that Baghdasaryan is the better technical striker in this spot, and I do think he's going to end up finding that chin of Anglin. I don't think this fight's going to go to the second or third round. I think the spots that could be intriguing are the under 2.5. Or is the under 2.5, which I think is around plus 125. Both guys have finishing capabilities. I think Anglin could potentially put it on later. Let's see what the under here. Yeah, the under 2.5 is plus 125. I do think that Baghdasaryan's speed, his power, and his technical acumen, not to mention his precision on most of his shots, should be able to find that chin of Anglin and put this guy down. Again, we haven't really seen too many instances of Anglin going out there and getting knocked out. He's only 8-1. His only loss coming via decision way early in his career. I believe it was his second pro fight. But I do think he's going to struggle here dealing with the type of striking that's coming his way from Baghdasaryan. I'm going to say this on it, like everybody can agree with this. Both of these guys pretty much had layups earlier in their career before the Contender Series. Colin does have an LFA fight against a 20-11 opponent who he was able to start within 14 seconds. I would love to have seen how that fight continues on if it did go any longer. But you could say the same thing from the Baghdasaryan side, although 0-0, 3-5, 0-0. 4-3. Like those are the type of guys these guys are going up against on the regional scene. So Anglin probably better level of experience that he's fought in the past, but I do still think that the technical expertise that Mousek shows in the striking realm is going to be a little bit too much for Anglin, and not to mention that power I think is ultimately going to catch up with him. So I'm going to go with Baghdasaryan, and I'm going to take him to win by first round knockout in this fight. Yes, hype MMA, you are correct. Mousek is a scary motherfucker. And I do think that he'll absolutely go out there and find that chin when he needs to. So I'm liking Baghdasaryan. Baghdasaryan round 1 isn't a bad spot either. Plus 450, I wouldn't mind that. And then obviously Baghdasaryan by KO plus 275, not a bad spot either. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Nico Montano minus 245 going up against Yanan Wu plus 205. Now, public perception out there on Nico Montano is not the greatest, and not to mention this is actually the prelim headliner. How? No idea. I would rather have them make it the Anglin and Baghdasaryan fight, but here we are. Obviously, the thing about Nico Montano has been the fact that she's just never able to make it to the cage, right? She won the Ultimate Fighter season 26 back in December of 2017, where she beat Roxanne Modafferi over 5 rounds. But then since then, she was scheduled for 2, 4, 6, 7 fights. 8 fights, and only made it to one of them, which was the Juliana Pena one back in July of 2019. So we're talking about close to 2 years, over 2 years ago at this point. We'll talk about that fight first, and then we'll get into the pullouts and all that stuff. But the Pena fight, solid 6.5-ish minutes from Nico Montano, getting the better of Juliana Pena in most of these grappling situations. But then it seemed like the size and the grappling advantage that I thought that Juliana Pena had in that fight started to pay its dividends, and she was able to kind of wear on Nico Montano, having her own success, closing out that the second round with some solid ground and pound. One judge actually gave Juliana Pena a 10-8 in that second round. I thought that was absolutely crazy to give her a 10-8 in that spot. But she gets a 10-8 in round 2, and then obviously wins round 3. Then she's scheduled to fight Macy Chiasson. She withdraws due to an injury. That was February of 2020. Then she fights Julia Avila. That fight gets rescheduled. Then she's supposed to fight her in September, pulls out due to COVID. I believe one of her coaches tested positive for COVID as well. Sorry, I need to wet the whistle there real quick. Then she was scheduled to fight Julia Avila again in October, but she could just, I believe that was a Fight Island card, and she was not able to get over due to travel restrictions or something like that. So she gets pulled out of that. And then the Carol Hossa fight, she's not medically cleared. Now, when that news originally came out, not a lot of people knew the fact that she actually got into a car accident in January, which was the reason she had to pull out of the Carol Hossa fight. Gets into a car accident, suffers a concussion, and then has to sit out. So out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights that she couldn't make, I believe only the Macy Chiasson one. Yeah, only the Macy Chiasson one was the one that was actually due to a legitimate training injury. The Carol Hossa one, like I said, it was due to a car accident that she suffered, and obviously had to, couldn't pass the physicals to make it to the fight. So there is that to worry about. Even before the Juliana Pena fight, the Sarah McMahon fight, McMahon is the one that pulled out due to an injury, and then Juliana Pena steps in. And then obviously the Shevchenko fight, we know what happened with that, the weight cut. So all of the fights preceding the Valentina Shevchenko fight were scheduled for 135 pounds. She is committed to 135 pounds now, it seems. It looks like she's doing the weight training and all that stuff to try to be comfortable at this weight. And she's even changed her training camp to go over there to Syndicate MMA in Las Vegas so she can take full advantage of the UFC PI, which is something that she seems to be doing quite often. And then obviously getting great bodies to work with when she's training over there at Syndicate MMA, which is a solid training camp for herself. In terms of how these women stylistically match up with each other, Yanan Wu probably has a slight striking advantage in this spot. I think the best way Yanan Wu truly finds success in this fight is if it remains a striking battle from distance for the full 15 minutes. I am hard-pressed to believe that Nico Montano will allow that to happen. I think that we'll see her clinch up. She's very nasty in the clinch as well, has some great elbows, has some great knees. She does a lot of damage. She's great takedown defense as well. And especially in those situations when she's trying to get taken down, she does a good job in terms of stuffing the takedown and landing damage as well. So it looks like she's being the one that's more active and actually adding damage in those fights. And then even her takedowns will definitely be the ace in the hole in this fight, in my opinion. I do think she'll be able to ground Wu. And even if she doesn't, if she just decides to go out there and clinch up against the cage with her and just kind of rough her up from that aspect, I think that Montano will have massive amounts of success there. Now, news just came out today, thanks to James Lynch, saying that Yanan Wu has actually been spending time over there at Team Oyama training with Alex Perez and those guys. And, they could definitely do some justice for her, but I wonder how much she's truly going to be able to pick up in that short amount of time, in terms of the grappling. That's definitely the reason that they're probably putting her over there to try to get some good bodies and some good work. But I do think that Montano should cruise in this fight, man. I truly feel very, very confident about her. She is my main play for the week as well. I think the public perception of her is just downplaying the skill that she actually has. And we just have to, as bettors and gamblers, we have to take our heads out of those negative spaces. The funny thing is, when you Google search Nico Montano, when you YouTube search Nico Montano, the first thing that comes up is Nico Montano, the worst UFC champion ever. That's the public perception of her right now. But this is a winnable fight for her. This is in my opinion, I think it's an easy fight for her, that she should go out there and win rounds quite easily with clinch work. Whether she gets the takedown or not, if she just pushes Wu up against the cage and just dishes out the damage, and then I think her striking is good enough to remain competitive as well. So I do like Montano on the spot. Again, Wu can win this fight. Don't get me wrong. If this fight does stay on the feet for the full 50 minutes and Wu is just getting her strikes off from the outside, she could win this fight. But I think that Montano will push this into the realms where she's going to have the advantage, the clinch, the grappling, the not the distance striking, the in the pocket striking. I think she'll have a lot of success there as well. So I like Montano a lot in this spot. I think that, some people might think the line is a little bit wide, but I do think that it's suitable. I think come fight time, she'll probably even look like minus 300, to be honest. But I do like Montano in this spot, and I think she very much cruises as well. I see a couple people actually asking about propping you up. Sorry, in terms of propping you up, we obviously didn't do the show this week. We will be back next week, though, so I apologize. Again, scheduling for me and Cody's a little bit very tough right now, considering he has a fucking 5-6 different hats that he wears in terms of different jobs and stuff, and then obviously everything that I got going on too. But yeah, we will be back next week for sure. Joe Rogan's forehead wrinkle saying, "What time is it where you are?" It is 1:47 a.m. Friday morning. So grinding, baby. We grinding out here. All right. So yeah, I like Montano. I'm taking Montano by decision. I'm seeing a couple Montano inside the distance people out there, but I think Wu will do a good enough job in terms of nullifying the amount of damage that's coming from on top, especially if this fight does hit the ground. But yeah, I do like Montano here, taking her by decision. All right, next up, we got Brian Barberena minus 260 going up against Jason Witt plus 220. Intriguing spot here, right? For Barberena coming back after an extended layoff. A lot of people think that this is a bit of a layup fight for him, but I'm going to go back kind of to the Garcia fight and talk about, if Barberena goes out there and doesn't get the finish, what happens? Now, Jason went super chinny. Obviously, everybody can see that. But again, like we put a lot of stock in these standing knockouts, and if they don't transpire, is Brian Barberena truly going to go out there and cover that line? There's been so many instances where he should, but he doesn't. And Jason Witt, albeit a mediocre fighter, he has decent wrestling, decent grappling, good top control. Not coming off of all these crazy surgeries that Brian Barberena is going through. And obviously James Krause trained, which is always a bit of a positive, no matter what skill level you're at. So I do think Barberena does go out there and starch Jason Witt here, but to me, Barberena has never really been that crazy one-punch knockout kind of guy. Obviously, it might come to fruition here, given the durability issues that Jason Witt showcases in some of his fights. But man, to put all my eggs in that basket is going to be a little bit tough for me to be like, "Ooh, Brian Barberena was absolutely starch him in this spot." I do think he does win the fight. I do think he lands that knockout blow early and gets Jason Witt out of there. But if he doesn't, man, things are going to get a little bit fishy. Definitely get fishy if Jason Witt starts landing takedowns and kind of grinding him in from on top. I think Jason Witt will be the stronger guy in these grappling and clinch positions, and that could cause Barberena some issues. And not to mention, Barberena was close to just hanging it up a couple fights ago. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was his coaches that were kind of just banging him to kind of get back into the cage. So to even have that type of mindset and then go through all those crazy surgeries and everything that he's had to go through over the last couple of years, it's a tough ask to pay minus 260 on him. I'd rather just take the quick KO prop, just take him by KO period. Let me just pull up those props real quick. Barberena by KO plus 160, Barberena in round 1 plus 250. Those are the two ways I'd look to approach it. But yeah, I do think Barberena wins here, and I do think that he stiffs him pretty quickly. But yes, I do like Barberena to win this. Z's MMA saying, yeah, I took Barb here. Barb inside the distance, but I'm sketching out. Didn't realize how bad his surgery was. Tristan Sherhouse letting us know Barberena has 2 first-round KOs in the UFC. Are we banking on him to do that, for sure here against Jason Witt? I don't know, man. A little bit sketchy, but I do think he ultimately ends up pulling it off. I'm not going to lay the minus 260. Obviously, I'll put him in maybe a couple parlays or something, 4 fun parlays, no serious money on them. But I do I think he gets it done pretty quickly here. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I did make a bit of a lottery parlay already. I think I chose to attack it from a under 2.5 perspective when I put it into my parlay. Let me just pull that up real quick. I'm going to share this to the Patron probably tonight. Yeah, I took oh no, I didn't take it. I took Barberena straight. That's fine. It was the Baghdasaryan and Colin Anglin fight that I took the under 2.5. But yeah, I do like Barberena here. I think he gets the knockout, but at minus 260, I'm a pass. I'm a pass for sure. All right, let me get some water, and then we will move on to the next fight. We got Ryan Benoit minus 140 going up against Zaruk Adashev, plus 120 on his side. And if you guys remember, these guys were scheduled to fight each other a couple months ago. I'm just going to quickly pull up the exact date that these guys were scheduled. May 8th. So they're scheduled to fight on May 8th, and that's exactly the day, or sorry, the day before, May 7th, when they went for the weigh-ins. Ryan Benoit had that weird episode where he went out there and just fainted, right? Like he couldn't even make it to the fucking stage. He couldn't even make it to the scale. I remember he kind of fainted, then he went to the back, and then they brought him back out, and he still fucking, like, it was one of the craziest situations I seen. I was so pissed off that the NSAC would even allow him to come back onto the scale for the second time. Obviously, the fight was quickly canceled after that. They are fighting at 125 pounds again, so we're definitely going to have to watch what Ryan Benoit looks like on the scales come this weekend. So if you're looking to, place a bet on him, I would rather wait till the end of the weigh-ins to truly decide if I want to part ways with my money for somebody who's shown, an incompetency in terms of making 125 pounds correctly. Now, both guys, sketchy records, 10-7, Ryan Benoit, 3-3, Zaruk Adashev. Adashev has a couple fights over there in Bellator where he was able to truly, I'd say, work out his full MMA game. He did get 2 knockout finishes in 3 of those fights. But he did show some spots where, he's trying to fuck around with the grappling. Obviously, he's a glory kickboxer and, has that kickboxing background, but he did need those rounds in terms of trying to go out there and grapple and just get a feel of it, especially in the live action. He's training out of Nick Catone's gym. Obviously, he has a ton of great training partners over there in New Jersey. So I got to believe that he's actually having solid success, or at least going to have some solid improvements once it gets to, fight time. He's only 29 years old. So you got to believe that he's going to be picking up a couple of things or two in terms of the grappling realm. But Ryan Benoit clearly has the advantage on paper in terms of being able to land takedowns and possibly going for submissions. In the striking realm, Benoit could have some success there, but I do think that we'll see Adashev actually land the better strikes and, land the more effective strikes. My concern here is how much is Benoit going to try to lean on the grappling for this fight, because that's probably where he has the clearest path to victory. In the past, Ryan Benoit's had to deal with guys that just want to go out there and grapple fuck him, which is why he's not had as much success as he could have. But now going up against Adashev, I'd be surprised if Adashev goes out there and tries to grapple fuck him. So I think we should get a striking battle here. But if Benoit knows what's better for him, he's going to want to mix in the clinch, mix in a couple takedowns, and try to make this more of a grimy fight. With that said, can you trust Ryan Benoit to do that? Like, do you think he's that level of fighter that he'll actually go out there and try to grapple fuck Adashev? You got to hope. But I'm actually leaning Adashev in this fight ever so slightly. I like him as a small dog, plus 120. I think he could be very effective on the feet. A lot of people thought he was going to go out there and get styled on and get, absolutely demolished by Wu Montano. Montano had a ton of success in the fight, don't get me wrong, but I do think that Adashev showed a little bit of bright spots in there, especially with the long, rangy, lanky, and unorthodox fighter like Wu Montano. I just want to quickly pull up the statistics of that. Mudarji landed 50 strikes to the 28. No real takedowns or anything in that. It was literally just a striking match, and Mudarji made full use of that height and reach advantage he had in that fight, compared to here where you have Benoit 3-inch reach advantage as well as the same height here. So I don't think that we'll see Adashev struggle as much as he did in the Mudarji fight in terms of finding that chin and finding the target here on Ryan Benoit. So I do like Adashev. I think he has a possibility to potentially KO Benoit here too, especially if he can find that chin. But I do think he's more of a point fighter than anything. And I think he'll be able to land the more solid and more effective strikes to take home a judge's decision. Am I ultimately or super confident to the point that I'm actually going to put my money on it? Probably not. But I do like Adashev in this spot. Adashev by decision is another spot that I like as well, which currently sits at Adashev by decision plus 255. Not too bad of a spot either there. So I do like Adashev here. I think he gets it done via decision. All right. Let's move on to the next fight. We got Jared Gooden stepping in on short notice to fight Nicholas Stolze. If I'm not mistaken, Stolze was supposed to fight Munir Lazez. Munir Lazez pulls out. In steps Jared Gooden. Now, Stolze UFC debut was against Ramazan Ameev. Very tough to prepare for a guy like that who fights the way that Ramazan does fight. a very tough UFC debut as well, which is why he ended up faltering in that fight. I think that this is a much better stylistic matchup for him, not to mention the fact that Gooden, coming in on short notice, known to be a guy that's kind of slowed down in past fights, could definitely be cause him some issues here against a durable guy like Stolze. I think Stolze is the better fighter all around. I think he has the better grappling. I think he has the better striking, but I do have to give the advantage to Gooden in terms of the power that he's able to muster up and lay on some of these guys, and obviously get a ton of knockouts as well on his record. I do think that Stolze will be able to stand up to most of his strikes and his offensive approach, and then start to take over the later this fight goes. And I think that's kind of going to be the X factor of this fight, is the fact that Stolze had a full training camp for in preparation for this date, whereas Gooden is just picking up the phone and be like, yeah, I'll take the fight. Gooden did show some decent skills in the Bubakar Nurmagomedov fight, had a decent jab that he was able to make somewhat effective, but I do think that it's going to be tough for him to do that here against Stolze, who in my opinion just has more tools, especially in the striking realm. Great kicks, great body kicks, and again, I think he has that ability to take this fight to the ground if he needs to, but I do think that he has Gooden covered everywhere in this fight, but I don't think that the line is, terribly off. I've heard some people taking early action on Stolze when the line initially dropped around -120, -130. I don't blame them for that, but roughly around -195, I don't think that there's much value on either side in this spot. Yeah, I like Stolze. I like Stolze by decision. No big lean or read in this spot. Probably will be a complete pass for me, especially on like lottery parlays and all that stuff. But I do think that Stolze wins this fight. Going to be tough for Gooden to overcome this fight. To actually find a win. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got 3 fights left. We're just flying through this. We got Cheyenne Buys, -165, going up against Gloria de Paula. +145 is the comeback on her. Now, if you guys remember me talking about it earlier in the show when I was talking about Darren Elkins and Derek Minner, Derek Minner having that recency bias on him in terms of, going out there and getting a decision victory against a guy like Charles Rosa. And now all of a sudden people believe that he's this new fighter, 37 fights into his career, that he's just all of a sudden going to have great cardio and should be able to decision fuck whoever the hell he wants. And that was clearly not the case. He did start to gas, he did start to suck wind, and he ultimately ended up getting finished. Another guy that I like to kind of throw in there is Khalil Roundtree, Ty Leal, as I used to call him, right? A guy who goes out there and has a fantastic performance against Eric Anders, and now all of a sudden everybody thinks he's the goods. Comes in there as I believe he was a favorite, if I'm not mistaken, against the Ion Cutelaba. Cutelaba goes out there and absolutely grounds the fight and then beats his shit into the canvas. And obviously has not looked good since either. But now this is like recency bias in a weird way. Like, it's recency bias in the fact that everybody thinks that Cheyenne Buys sucks. She doesn't suck. She's a decent fighter. It sucks that the fact that she got stuck in that head and arm position for almost 15 minutes against Montserrat Ruiz. But do you guys really expect Paula to go out there and do the same thing? You think that she's just going to fucking head and arm throw to Buys and keep her in that position for 15 minutes? No, that's not Paula's game. What is Paula's game? She likes to go out there and strike. She has solid hands. She has decent power. She has good combinations. But I think she struggles when she fights girls that are willing to take her to the mat. And I think that's exactly what Cheyenne Buys is going to be successful in doing in this fight. I think that she'll be able to ground her time and time again if she looks to go that route. And I do think that she'll struggle in those situations as well. Sorry, I was just looking at something in terms of her record that kind of threw me off. But yeah, DePaula, obviously, I think she'll have the striking advantage in this fight, but I think that Cheyenne Buys would be absolutely bonkers to not go out there and try to pursue the takedown, considering the lack of takedown defense that we saw from DePaula in her last fight, or in her last couple fights, I should say, and then her inability to get back to her feet or even produce any type of resistance off of her back. So I think that this is almost a buy low spot for Cheyenne Buys. We need to erase that anomaly of a fight of the Montserrat Ruiz fight. In all of the years of watching MMA that you guys have gone through, how many times have you ever seen a fighter complete that time and time again? Or how many times have you seen different fighters go out there and complete the head and arm position type of way that Cheyenne Buys was beaten in her last fight? Very little. I think if that didn't, if Cheyenne Buys went out there and just got quickly subbed, or if Cheyenne Buys went in there and even won, she probably would be a minus 250, minus 300 in this spot, especially with the Paula having the fight that she had against Jinyu Frey last time around. So, yeah, I'm on Cheyenne Buys here. I think that it's a decent spot for a minus 165 is a great line, in my opinion. I think she can grind out the Paula in this spot. I do think that she wins this fight via decision as well. Where is it? I just want to pull up the odds here for the props. But yeah, I think Buys cruises in this fight, to be honest. Buys by decision plus 100. I think that's the spot. Even taking her money line, I don't think it's a bad idea in case she gets a TKO or a submission with her grappling. But I do think that she is rightfully favored. I think people are just scared to bet on her because of the Ruiz fight. Take that out of your mind. This is a completely different fight. In my opinion, the only way she loses this fight is if she plays into DePaula's game, which is go out there and strike for 15 minutes. I don't think she'll do that. I think she's smart enough, not to mention Fortis MMA. I think they're good enough to go out there and know to take this fight to the ground and nullify the striking advantage that DePaula is going to have here. So I do like Buys here. Don't let the negative recency bias on Buys take you off of her in this spot, but I do think she wins. So I do like Cheyenne Buys to win the spot. Yeah, Andrew Logan, you got to be a madman to bet on Gloria DePaula. You are absolutely right in the spot. So yeah, I do really like Buys in the spot. And yeah, she should win pretty easy. Daniel's saying Buys trains at Extreme Couture, the artist margin. Is she at Extreme? I thought she was at Fortis. Unless they changed. Just quickly make that adjustment. Yeah, it looks like she's at Extreme Couture. Interesting. Again, not a bad training camp either. It looks like her hubby made the move with her as well. I wonder why they made the move. I'm just quickly going back to see when she made the move down there. Looks like she got her blue belt 35 weeks ago. That was pre-Contender Series, it looks like. Yeah, interesting. I didn't realize that she changed camps. Also interesting that 29 weeks ago, she had a picture with her and Jinyu Frey. But yeah, I like Buys here, regardless whether it's whether it's Extreme Couture or Fortis MMA. You gotta believe that these guys know that their best way to win this fight is to take this fight to the ground. All right, let's move on to the co-main event. We got Kyung Ho Kong versus Hani Yahya. Intriguing matchmaking here, but even more intriguing line movement. It seems like there's some love coming in on Hani Yahya as fight week is progressing. We saw Kyung Ho Kong roughly around minus 145 for the majority of the week, but the line is slowly starting to tighten up here. And when this fight was originally announced, I was all over the Kong side. I'm more than likely going to bet Kong, and he might even be a lock of the night play. But then when you start to run the tape again, you realize how much closer he makes these fights than they should be. And that concerns me a little bit here, especially with Hani Yahya, who could make it a little bit more difficult for Kong, especially if Kong decides to go out there and engage in the grappling, where Hani Yahya probably has his best chance to win the fight. I do think that Kong has the better cardio, which will ultimately be the reason I think he ends up winning this fight. His grappling is good enough that he should be able to stay out of any grappling danger from Hani Yahya early in this fight. And then as the fight starts to wear on, I think Kong will get will land takedowns and have success from top position and, start raining down some shots. I think he's going to be the much bigger fighter in this spot. I think he'll be the stronger fighter in this spot. And again, I think he's very well versed in the grappling realm that he shouldn't be in too much danger should Yahya get this fight to the ground early. Now, Yahya does that Sergio Moraes type thing in terms of his striking, where he just throws everything into his strikes, no regard for being taken down, because that's where he wants to fight ultimately. So might as well throw some bungalows out there, try to knock your opponent down, try to get a club and sub, or at least try to force a takedown out of them. So he could be dangerous at times when he decides to do that. But I think that Kang will have the slightly better striking in this. And again, I do think that his offensive wrestling and his submission defense should keep him out of bad spots. And he could potentially get a third round finish in this fight. I do think that his cardio is that much better than Yahya's, that he should be able to muster up a late finish should it reach there. So Kang to win in round 3 is plus 1625, which is crazy to me considering that Yahya has the better round 3 odds, or at least, the more chances to hit, plus 1100 for Yahya to win in round 3. But I do think that Kang cruises in this fight. It's shitty that he isn't that active. I know he has a bunch of stuff that he was doing in Korea, and just having military obligations and all that type of stuff. But I do think that he is a solid talent. It's kind of shitty that he's getting up there in age, but I don't think he'll actually reach his full potential. And even though he has a salty record of 17-8, he just started off his career in a pretty, he started off his career 6-5, and then since then, he's only lost 3 times and managed to put together, was it 3, 6, 9 wins, 10 wins. So yeah, I do like Kang here. The line is getting mighty juicy, especially considering that it's minus 120. I'd be surprised if the line ended as a pick'em or even as Kang as the underdog. But yeah, I think there's a possibility for a late Kang finish, but the over 2.5, I've seen somebody talk about it in the comment section, but I have seen other people talk about it. Over 2.5 minus 155, not too bad of a spot. I can see this being a grapple fest, but I will take a little bit of a stab on Kang round 3 just in case. But yeah, I do like Kang here. All right, let's move on to the next fight, and this is the main event coming up. And I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you guys, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe if you haven't already, and let's bring this baby home. Main event time. We got Sean Strickland minus 190. His line coming down as well. And we got Uriah Hall plus 165 is the return on him now. Crazy to see the movement here. Sean Strickland, just on Tuesday was minus 220. Now he's up to minus 190. A lot of people, buying into the Uriah Hall thing. And I truly believe people are leaving money on the table if you just don't bet Hall by KO at plus 325, plus 330 that I'm seeing at certain places. Sean Strickland, very good minute winner, very good striker, good with volume, good with output. He should have a Hall covered pretty much everywhere in this spot. But Hall has that death touch, in my opinion, that could potentially change the course of the fight. We've seen him pull off last-minute miracle finishes in the past. We've seen him kind of just pull wins out of his ass just because of his explosiveness and his power. And Sean Strickland's, lack of striking defense at times definitely gives me some question marks. He does a decent job in terms of rolling with his strikes so that he's kind of able to take the brunt of his opponent's shots off of it. But Uriah Hall is just a beast when it comes to his striking and not striking, but his speed and his power. And that could definitely clip Sean Strickland in this spot. So that's why I'm a little bit hesitant in terms of taking Sean Strickland outright. And a lot of people are thinking that he's going to be my lock of the night play as well. He's definitely up there. But again, something about Hall, something in my gut is just giving me a bad feeling about this. Hall to win in round 1 is plus 775. And then a Hall to win by KO plus 195. Or sorry, plus 325. Hall by KO is the one that I would take if I was taking Hall to win this fight, but I'm not. I am taking Sean Strickland. I do think that he pieces him up for the majority of the fight. I think he starts to pick it up the later the fight goes, and I think he eventually breaks Uriah Hall and eventually finishes him later in this fight. I'm going to be poking Sean Strickland round 3 plus 1025, Sean Strickland round 4 plus 1625, Sean Strickland round 5 plus 2425. But I do think that he ultimately wins the fight by decision, plus 335 for him. Oh, sorry, that's a unanimous decision. Strickland to win by decision is plus 215. Not too bad of a line there either. If you guys have access to those bookies that allow you to do round 4, round 5 decision, I think somebody told me that I was like plus 145. I think that's a great spot as well. But just for kicks, I'm definitely going to be taking some shots at those round props. But I do think he ultimately wins by decision. Again, not a good look when you see Hall losing minutes to 45-year-old, 44-year-old Anderson Silva, albeit Hall goes out there and ends up getting the finish a couple rounds later. But now you're giving me Sean Strickland, who's in the peak of his a career. It looks like having, career type performances, career best performances, and level of competition wise, Uriah Hall is probably up there, if not the best guy that Sean Strickland has to go up against, at least since he fought Dos Santos, Kamaru Usman, early Kamaru Usman. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think Strickland cruises here. The chance of Uriah Hall landing the knockout is a little bit too much of a concern for me to ultimately, part ways with my money for him as my lock of the night play. But I do think that Strickland wins this fight at a pretty high clip, and I think he wins by decision. But I do think that taking some shots on him to win later in this fight is definitely worth a shot too. But yeah, I like Strickland here. I'm going to take him to win this fight by decision. All right. That's pretty much a wrap on here. I'll stick around for about 5 more minutes if anybody has any questions that you guys want me to answer. Now is your time to do so. Again, bummed that I'm a little bit late this week in terms of the content. Still got to get it out for you guys. No issues. I have tomorrow. I got a couple things. I'm going to be doing. I think they're called the Parlay Perfectionists or something. Hold on, let me just pull up their Instagram real quick. But I am making an appearance on podcast tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be live. PPP certified, perfect parlay pursuit. Those are the guys that I'm going to be linking up with tomorrow. So as soon as the weigh-ins are done, I'm going to be going on their podcast again. I'm not sure if it's a live podcast, but I'll be on with them. Then I'll be going on with Z for Fair Play Podcast. I'll be going on to his podcast, I believe around 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. And then obviously I have my own Ultimate Weigh-In show that's going to be going down tomorrow. And my guests are going to be Clint, Lucrative MMA, and then my guy John Stargarian from the Club and Sub podcast. So make sure you guys stop by for that, and obviously check out Z's Fair Play podcast as well. I believe his show is going to be kicking off around 6 o'clock. I see him in the comment section here, so maybe he can let me know exactly when his show is kicking off. But yeah, full lineup of content for you guys to consume tomorrow. And also, if I do find some time in between Z's podcast and the other appearance that I'm doing, I'll do I'll try to do a quick Bellator stream for you guys, but no promises on that side either. Okay, saying you're giving free locks this week. Yeah, again, just for those of you that are not familiar with my my policy that I kind of follow, if I'm on a 3-event winning streak or longer, then I keep my picks behind my Patreon paywall. If I'm not on a 3-event winning streak or anything less than that, I give away my picks for free, but they're going to be they release on Friday. So I post them as soon as I make them on my Patreon page, but then I wait until Friday evening to release them to the public. But since you guys are here on a early Friday morning for you guys, I'll quickly drop them. My dog of the night play 1 unit under 2.5 in the half a Garcia fight with Chris Gruetzemacher, and then my lock of the night play, I went 5 units deep on Montano at minus 230, as I do think that, in my opinion, I feel she's the safest spot on this card. Tofik Chowdhury wants a best 3-fight parlay. Again, as many question marks as I threw out there. Actually, you know what? I'll go. Fuck. Obviously, Montano. I'm gonna go Montano. I'm gonna go Garcia, and I'm gonna go buys. I was gonna throw Barberena in there, but I feel a little bit better about buys than I do Barberena. So yeah, there you go. Garcia, Montano, buys. Tristan Sherhouse is saying prediction for McKee versus Pitbull. Lean is McKee, but I'm going to run the tape tomorrow, and I'll give you guys a better idea tomorrow. Again, McKee, very, very minimal lean. Like, this is a huge step up for him, in my opinion. For sure. CG Hustle, Barberena, Garcia, Montano. I'm assuming you meant Montano. Parlay, I don't mind that. Tofik is saying Usman Nurmagomedov is the lock for Bellator for sure, but I'd get fucking scorched by everybody if I dropped a minus 1200 straight for you guys. Again, PG asking about Pitbull versus AJ. Lean is AJ, but again, very, very low confidence there. Z's MMA saying that's the kind of card it is. Buys is a relatively solid spot. Yikes, you're right. It is. Frank Jordan saying, "Lot, good to see you. I was wondering where you were." Yeah. Again, been an interesting week, but glad to get some content out for you guys. All right, I'm gonna hop off. I'm gonna jump on and do the best bets and props article for the Patreon members. That should be posted in the next hour and a half or so. And then yeah, tomorrow Ultimate Weigh-In Show. Going to be jumping on the Fair Play podcast with Z around 6. Another podcast I'll be doing around 2:00 as well. As soon as the weigh-ins. And then, yeah, I got something cool to announce tomorrow as well. I'm going to drop that news on Z's podcast. So make sure you guys tune in for Z's show as well. You guys will get some very interesting news about Saturday. So I can't wait to drop that for you guys. But yeah, appreciate everybody dropping by again, 2 a.m. on a Friday morning. 120 live members. You guys are awesome. Make sure you guys hit that like on the way out to show your boys some support. And for everybody listening on the audio version as well, appreciate you guys checking out the show. Apologies for the lateness of it and the fact that it's not the usual pre-recorded show. We will go back to normal regularly scheduled viewing next week for the big UFC 265 card. All right. I'm out of here. Appreciate you guys joining me as always. I will see you guys tomorrow for the Ultimate Weigh-In Show, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on this channel. Peace out, guys. Good luck on your bets this weekend.